My name is Fiona Calloway. I'm 35 years old. And the minute my divorce was finalized, I stood on the courthouse steps, still holding the envelope with the ink barely dry, and called my father. I told him one thing: fire all 27 of them. My hands were shaking so hard I almost dropped the phone. But I'd never meant anything more in my life. You're watching Second Seat Stories. And this is mine. My father, Harold Calloway, built his steel company out of a rented warehouse back in 1987, grew it into one of the biggest structural steel suppliers in the region, all from nothing. When I turned 30, he handed me 25% of it. Not as a gift, he said. As a responsibility. I married Reginald 8 years ago. And from the very first family dinner, his mother, Delphine, looked at my father's company like it was something that belonged to her family too. She never said it outright. She was smarter than that. She'd just say things like, "Family should look out for family," or "Reginald's cousins are so talented, it would be a shame not to use them." So they got used, one by one, over 6 years. Delphine's relatives and hand-picked friends filled positions across the company: payroll, logistics, procurement, even our internal audit team. My father trusted me, and because he trusted me, he trusted every name I brought him. He never once asked why half our new hires shared my husband's last name. It took me 6 years to see what was actually happening. It started small. A missing invoice here. A vendor contract that quietly moved to a company registered under Delphine's maiden name. Then bigger things. Steel orders that should have needed 3 signatures sailing through on just one from Reginald's cousin Desmond, who ran procurement. Shipments getting rerouted by another cousin, Preston, to a second warehouse that officially didn't even exist. I brought it up to Reginald once, gently, over dinner. He laughed, told me I was being paranoid, seeing conspiracies where there was just family helping family. I brought it up again months later. He got cold, told me I sounded ungrateful, so I stopped talking. And I started watching. I hired a forensic accountant, paid her in cash, met her twice a week in a coffee shop 40 minutes from home, so nobody would ever see us together. It took her 11 months to untangle it all. 27 employees. Every single one connected to Delphine by blood or marriage, planted across every department that mattered. Together, they'd pulled almost $4 million out of my father's company over 6 years. Inflated invoices, phantom consulting fees, and that second warehouse Preston kept rerouting shipments to? It was an empty lot behind a strip mall Delphine owned. I didn't confront Reginald with any of it. I filed for divorce instead. Quietly, irreconcilable differences. And I let that accountant's report sit sealed in a drawer until my decree was final. Some people might call that cowardly. I call it patient. Because the second I was free, legally completely free of anything that made his family feel entitled to protection, I could act without a shred of guilt holding me back. So there I was. Courthouse steps, gray blazer, the one I wore because it made me feel like the person I was always supposed to be. I called my father and gave him 6 years of betrayal in about 4 minutes. The shell company, the fake invoices, the warehouse that didn't exist. And I told him to fire all 27 of them, effective immediately, security walking each one out before the day was over. He went quiet for a long moment. Then he just said, "Send me the report." 20 minutes later, HR had a list. 2 hours later, the termination started. Good thing they did. Because that same evening, while I was still unpacking boxes in the rental house I'd moved into, Delphine showed up at my door, pounding on it hard enough that my neighbor's porch light clicked on. I'd known this woman 8 years. Never once heard her raise her voice. She was screaming before I even got the door fully open. Told me to reverse every termination, or I would regret ever being born into a family that dared touch what she considered hers. And I just felt calm. For the first time in 8 years. "You need to leave my property," I told her. She laughed. Told me I had no idea what I'd done. That those 27 people had families depending on those paychecks. Families I was starving out of spite. I told her the only thing being starved was my father's company. Slowly, on purpose. For 6 years, and that the report proving it was already sitting with my lawyer. Something shifted in her face right then. She knew I wasn't bluffing, so she switched tactics, softened her voice, told me Reginald still loved me, that this could all be undone if I just reconsidered the divorce and reinstated everyone. For the family's sake, I almost admired how fast she pivoted from threats to fake tenderness. Under 30 seconds flat, I told her there was nothing to reconsider. The divorce was final. The terminations were final. And if she or Desmond or Preston or any of the other 25 wanted to fight it, they were welcome to do it in court, where that forensic report would become public record. That's when the threats of lawsuits started. I just closed the door. The next few weeks were hard. Not because I doubted myself, but because rebuilding 6 years of embedded corruption meant rebuilding entire departments from scratch. My dad brought in a sharp operations manager to run procurement and logistics while we vetted new hires properly this time. Within a month, shipment delays that had haunted us for years just vanished. Vendor costs dropped almost 18% once we canceled the shell company contracts and replaced them with real, competitively bid ones. My dad called me every night that first month, sometimes just to read me the updated numbers. His voice got lighter every single time, like a man realizing a weight he'd carried so long, he'd forgotten it was even there. Reginald called exactly once. 3 weeks after his mother showed up at my door. His voice was quiet in a way I hadn't heard in years. He didn't defend her. Didn't defend a single name on that list. He just asked how I was doing. For 1 second, I saw the man I actually married. Underneath the version his mother had spent a decade building, I told him I was doing better than I had in years. I meant it. He never called again. Delphine's promised lawsuit never showed up either. Her own lawyer took one look at that forensic report and quietly advised her that pushing it any further would basically hand-deliver a fraud case straight to the district attorney. Desmond and Preston left the state within 2 months. The shell company was dissolved before the year was out, probably to bury the paper trail before anyone looked too closely. My father never pressed criminal charges. Not because he didn't have the evidence. He told me watching them lose everything they built on stolen ground was punishment enough, and that dragging our name through years of ugly headlines wasn't worth it. I understood that. Even if part of me wanted more. 6 months later, the company posted its strongest quarter in its entire history. Fully staffed for the first time in years by people who'd earned their positions instead of inheriting them through marriage. That spring, my father named me president. Standing on the same warehouse floor where he started the whole thing almost 40 years earlier, he told every employee in that room that the company had finally been handed back to the people who actually built it. I stood there in that same gray blazer from the courthouse steps, and for the first time in years, my life actually felt like mine. If you like this story, hit subscribe. Second Seat Stories drops a new one every week. And tell me in the comments, would you have waited 6 years, or would you have acted the moment you found out?